3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream show. We have some great guests today. Best guest, law professor Jo Potuto and Dawn DeKisto, potential juror who has been following the Markel case for many years and covering it on her own channel. But due to my voice issues, I did ask Professor Jo if she could kind of take over since she did so well running SDS last week. Okay with that, Jo?
I didn't hear you. Did you? I was so amused by you. I didn't hear your last comment. I was laughing to myself.
Oh, okay. Well, we have just designated you as the person who leads the discussion.
All right. Well, I'll start. As you can tell from the caption that Judy posted, this program is about what is the evidence or the information that we have that would lead to a conclusion that Wendi was complicit in the conspiracy to murder Dan Markel and that there's sufficient admissible evidence to prosecute her. So that's where we're starting. And I guess I can start with one, and it's maybe to me the most obvious. She's the person who benefited most from the murder. And it's a little hard to imagine that the person who benefited most had family members active in committing the murder, and she knew nothing about it and had no involvement in it. So, I mean, I would put that as number one. It's the key. I can't do the Latin, but key bono. That's where you start. And she seems to me to be at the top of the list. So, Dawn, I'll push it to you now.
Okay, I agree. And I've always kind of referred to Wendi as the instigator. So whether or not the authorities have found actual evidence that she is involved, your point is very obvious that she was not only the person that benefited the most, but the person who was the most vocal, well, Donna too, but the most vocal about how she couldn't stand Tallahassee and how she wanted to move and how she, to this day, this is what really strikes me, is to this day in testimony after all these years, she still doesn't miss a chance to disparage Dan Markel, which is heartbreaking, but makes it also so obvious that she still has hurt feelings for whatever reason and holding a grudge against Dan. So she shows, to me, a great amount of hatred toward Dan, even to this day.
Yeah. And Dawn, did you say before we went live that you have a kind of a capsule list of the things that you think would lead to a conclusion that she knew and was complicit?
Well, Judy, I do.
And you did it from Judy's list,
but I have,
understand.
yes, from Judy's fantastic document that she did last night.
Okay.
And I'm going to summarize it, Judy, and then
Sure.
if you I'm sure I'll miss.
Yeah, I'll jump in
summary
later.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first one, summarize Wendi's behavior at the crime scene. An officer noted her car quickly leaving the scene, and as we looked at his testimony over the weekend when we were preparing for this, he said it was very different from the other people who pulled up to the crime scene and left. She did it quickly. Her interview with the police, Detective Isom, and trial accounts of her driving near the scene were inconsistent. So she had 4 different statements. One, the police interview, and then 3 times she's testified about her visiting the crime scene or not. And she claimed to be in a rush, but she also took a circuitous route. So she was not taking a shortcut. She was not taking the most direct route. But one of the things...
If I can just interject there, excuse me, Dawn. The thing that has struck me all along is if she was in a rush and she needed to get the bourbon for the party, she could have gone to lunch and done that after lunch because she had plenty of time after lunch. There was no reason why she had to do it prior to. So let me just interject. That's my little a tiny addition to Judy's great list. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a good 5 hours to talk to Isom, didn't she? She could have been getting out, doing all kinds of errands. That's a really good point. So that's the summary, Judy. What do we miss?
Well, there's a ton of stuff that I wrote. It was kind of like a brain dump that I typed up late last night. It took me maybe an hour to 2 hours to type this up. So maybe I'll just go ahead and share it. But of course, the whole disclaimer is that these are just our opinions on this public issue. So the trials have been broadcast on multiple channels. Lots of people like to discuss this. So these are just our opinions. So
That's right.
Judy is doing that since she asked me to run the show. I would tell the people in the chat that if you have other comments or things to add, just post them so that we can try to do this as a kind of the entire enchilada and cover everything we think leads to a conclusion that Wendi was complicit and guilty with regard to the crime.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe this will help the attorneys involved prepare for trial. So, I mean, sometimes when doing these YouTube things, I keep thinking of how Charlie said Rashbaum was watching all the YouTube shows and he would watch them while riding his exercise bike. So it is kind of creepy, I guess, to think, okay, great, now we're on their radar. And I did get a comment from someone who is presumably John Lauro years ago when I had this video about whether Wendi was involved. So, it's just something like, hey, justice for Dan doesn't mean no justice for Wendi. And, some sort of like slightly cautionary type of comment. And I think I did write back and say something like, hey, I'd love to have you on the show, or would you like to come on? And of course, no response. And I think he did the same thing to mentor lawyer James of Deep Dive True Crime. And as far as I recall, James even told him, hey, you want to come on a show? Feel free to come on and you can give your client's side of the story. And he didn't hear anything else from him either. So, but anyway, here's my big document. It's not a beautifully edited work because I think I've spent way too many hours watching stuff and rewatching stuff and, debating with people behind the scenes. So, so do you guys want to just kind of hit some of the highlights or give
I'd be happy to start. Dawn referred to this one already. The officer on the scene, Brannon, who saw what seemed to be Wendi's car come up the road and then turn around and leave without asking any questions. And remember, she's got 2 children who were with Dan that morning. She sees or should have seen police tape because Brett Bannon said it was obvious from the road that you would see the police tape. She sees an officer, or there's an officer in a patrol car right there. And anyone with any curiosity would have asked what's going on or tried to look. I mean, you look at people on a highway, it rains a little and everything slows down. There's an accident on the highway and it takes an extra hour to get where you want to go because everybody slows down to watch it. And she's the mother of 2 small children who were staying at one of the houses that was pretty close to where their patrol car was. And she doesn't ask any questions. The only thing she does is turn around and leave, which is, I would say from my perspective, certainly unusual conduct from a mother and also suspicious conduct at the scene. So Dawn, I will now, we had what was tennis today? So I will,
Right.
I will hit it to you.
Congratulations to Iga and to Sinner. Okay, so I wrote down the 4 different accounts, and here's my point that Wendi gave on the stand and to Isom about whether or not she did what we just discussed, whether or not she visited the crime scene, which is really what it's about. And it's been shown that criminals like to visit the crime scene. That is why this has got George's attention. But she said, number one, I went to drive by Trescott, which I thought was interesting. This was at the police interview. It's the only time she used that language, drive by Trescott. So she literally went to drive by to ABC Liquor, and it was blocked. So I just turned around. First testimony, first trial, I went to turn on to Trescott, but I saw that it had been blocked off by some tape. So I just kept going on Centerville, which we know is not true. I did turn in this second trial, I did turn off Centerville onto Trescott. So she backpedaled there and changed her story. There was some tape and it looked like the road was blocked off. So I just turned around and went back. And then the last trial, Charlie's trial, I was driving on Centerville Road and I saw some sort of tape or obstructions. So I didn't turn. So it's been kind of going back and forth. And to Joe's point, not only was a police car blocking, Brandon's car was blocking, but he said it had lights going. It wasn't just a car, it was lights, and other law enforcement cars had lights going.
Multiple vehicles.
Would have really been quite the scene to just, like you say, Joe, not be curious about it all when your children just spent the night there.
Right. And as I recall, the tape was up fairly close to the house. And one of her accounts, which was she never turned, I think the evidence was she couldn't have seen the tape if she hadn't actually turned onto the road. I think Patty's Playhouse at one point, she went over to the road and sort of mapped out where the tape would have been and the direction Wendi would have had to take to be able to get to a place where the officer, Bannon, could have seen her and seen the car. Couldn't have happened on the road. She had to turn in. It was not a shortcut to going anywhere. And my view of this is that either she was assigned the role of assuring that the murder took place that day, because there's some evidence, or at least some information, that there might have been an earlier attempt that didn't succeed. So either she was assigned that role, or she just couldn't keep herself from going and trying to confirm that it had happened, because there's no other. I mean, the route that she took was not a direct route. She was supposedly in a hurry. I mean, the explanation doesn't make much sense. And I think if Wendi is prosecuted, that the state will do a terrific job of showing the detour, showing where the other liquor stores were, talking about the fact that on her schedule, she would have had plenty of time after lunch to buy the bourbon, and also doing a really good job of showing where the tape was. I suspect they may actually have a graphic to show you where the tape was, and that she had to have gone in to be able to see the tape. So.
Yeah, at least one of the trials, they had Officer Brannon use some sort of laser pointer to pinpoint where he was located and how far that was to Centerville. So that's completely bogus if she's going to keep saying that she didn't even turn on Trescott. You know, she keeps changing the story. But the reason I bring this website up, Stephen Epstein's website, which is stephenpepstein.com. You can click on it. And in this picture, it's clear that that tape says crime scene. It doesn't say, just caution. So it makes it even more ridiculous for her to say that, oh, I thought it was a downed tree, or I thought it was an electrical outage. So
and let me add, Judy, that even if she thought that's what it was, her children are in that house.
Well,
you want to be able to figure out whether the downed tree might have hit the house. I mean, it doesn't have to be a murder in the house to worry about the safety of your children.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she probably knew the kids were in daycare because Dan had called her. And I think he left her a message saying he was going to the gym because they were supposed to have some sort of conversation about the older child's school. because Wendi had signed the kid up for some sort of school lottery for a charter school without telling him. So that was the reason why she was supposedly, supposed to be in touch with Dan that day. But, I totally agree. As soon as I heard that she was seen or her vehicle was seen driving up to the crime scene place, I was like, that really sinks her, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she knows it. Because if she knows it, because she keeps changing her story. So if she was like, well, I just always go that way, even though it's not a shortcut, I call it a short. I mean, I have ways that I go because, they might not be a shortcut, but I just don't like certain streets. I don't like the traffic or whatever. But I wouldn't have to change my story 4 times in order to explain that. I'd be just like, I know it doesn't make sense, but I go down this street. That's the way I go. I always go that way. End of story. I wouldn't change my story that many times. So it kind of gives me the feeling, and this is a feeling, of guilty knowledge on her part.
Yeah. And I
opinion.
think the other evidence here, the other information is that not only is it, and you can see how far out of the way it is, but the street itself has speed bumps and other things, so you can't take that street very quickly. And Judy, you may have seen Patty's Playhouse on this. I think she said that the other street, the main street that Wendi would have had to turn off of, has a lot of traffic. There's a traffic light there, and it's very long to get through it. So she chose a route that was not only out of the way, but would have been extra long if she had stayed on, I guess it's Prescott, because of the traffic there and the traffic light, or would have been very long because that detour onto her street would have hit speed bumps, and she wouldn't have been able to go very quickly at all. So it's a very, let me say, peculiar story from someone who said she was in a hurry to get to lunch.
Mm-hmm. So that she didn't even have time to shower. So she's all filthy. Yeah. So look at, when you see this graphic, when I saw it shown on the screen during one of the past trials, I was like, wow, this is very telling. And other YouTubers such as Fancy Fiction also made something like this. True Lifestyles had a video showing this type of map too. This image is from the Florida Politics article. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so this red dotted line would have been the most direct way for Wendi to get to Mosaic. It's just west of where she lived. But why go all the way down? That's a real long detour, especially considering traffic. And Joe, you mentioned the speed bumps. So during Charlie's trial, Fancy drove me through this whole route. Mm-hmm. So, just driving the route really hits it home that this is really out of the way. There's no reason why somebody would need to drive south and then go west, then go to this ABC store to buy bullet, then go way up north, especially if you say you're in a rush.
So this one really is 2 pieces of evidence. One is going way out of her way, and 2, or actually 3, because as Dawn pointed out, 4 different stories each time. So 1, going way out of her way, 2, not being able to tell or not telling the same story, and 3, not being at all curious when she sees the tape and everything else. So this one has 3 different pieces of evidence attached to it in terms of a conclusion that she had guilty knowledge and was complicit.
Sure, and 4, if you want to add that she was going to buy bullet bourbon.
Or bullet rye whiskey.
Or whatever. Yeah, and I just keep coming back to that original interview because I went through her interview so many times with such detail, and it's that she said, I went to drive by Trescott. I went to drive by Trescott. And we know the first statement, of course, she's all panicky. She doesn't know if she's been caught. She doesn't know what they know. But that stuck with me. And then she said it was blocked, so I turned around. But also, don't they have her GPS data, or did they not get that? Because they downloaded her phone that day, no?
Judy, you know this case better than I, but I don't think they have GPS data from her. Do you? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know about that. They do have the cell phone data
Right.
where the phone was located.
So they might have more on that than we know about.
That's
or they
true.
might not have it.
That's true. And they were able to find her at lunch.
That's right.
Yes. And I always thought, now I can't even remember where I first heard this from, but I always thought that they found her through tracking her cell phone, because the police were able to quickly assess that Dan Markel's ex-wife worked also at Florida State. So they contacted the law school to get her phone number. And that's how I believe they found her. But then I went reading through the draft of Epstein's book, and it didn't say anything about that. So maybe someone told me behind the scenes. I can't even remember. But
as we know from the testimony, was it Newland? The cell phone data can't give you precise location. It can tell you general area. So the cell phone data, I suspect, would be able to say she was in that area, but couldn't tell whether she had turned off Prescott or not. It wouldn't be able to be that nuanced or refined. At least, I mean, I'm not an expert on this at all, but as I recall, Newland's testimony, or Corbett's, I don't remember which, that's the way it sounded.
And just to interrupt, this is the house that Wendi lived in. She was renting it on Aqua Ridge. So maybe I'll just let the video play silently while we continue talking. But unfortunately, I stopped recording for a little while because my hands were getting kind of tired from holding my cell phone the whole time. It was a really long drive to me. Like, this was not like something that you would want to drive if you're in a big rush to just go to a restaurant that's directly west.
Right. Brandon's short little testimony had so many little details too. He mentioned that they were already aware of that Dan had an ex-wife before he even set up the perimeter. That he was already made aware by other police.
Geiger.
Could have been Geiger.
Both.
Yeah, Geiger.
He said both, but so they were aware from the police. Law enforcement was aware that he had an ex-wife and what kind of car she drove and what color. So evidently they were on the lookout for this kind of thing. Which is crazy. I wouldn't even have thought of that. And then I think Geiger said the color and that they were split up, but also just the fact that when she went there and she claimed to be in a hurry and she claimed to be distracted because she was on the phone, but she, of all the other cars that came onto the scene up to the tape, didn't seem to pause at all and think like, oh, what am I doing? I guess I have to turn around type thing. Gannon made that point. I'm sorry. Bannon? Did I hate his name? Brannon. Sorry.
Still Brannon.
Sorry about that. Made the point on all three testimonies that he did, that she was like, boom, she saw what she saw. She turned around quickly and was very decisive. So she didn't look like somebody who was scattered and in a rush or anything like that, on top of not having any natural curiosity about what was going on in her neighborhood or her prior neighborhood. So it was great that we talked about looking at those videos again, Judy, because I kind of forgot that stuff.
Same here. So many details, and it's the puzzle pieces. And I had told someone, look, you have to put 2 and 2 together. But the more I think of it, it's not just as easy as 2 plus 2. It's like, these breadcrumbs and, this and that and this inconsistency and this witness said that. And, it's like a lot of circumstantial evidence, which, as lots of lawyers say, circumstantial evidence is evidence.
It is. It is for sure. And I was very in tune to the Kentucky versus Brooks Houck. They had no body. no murder weapon, no crime scene, and really not much of a motive. There was no conversations Brooks was, mad at his girlfriend or any of these things that we have in this case. And yet they still got a guilty conviction. It was other things, though. It was very similar to the Adelsons, a mother who wanted the child. They weren't married. She didn't like the mother of the child, the grandchild, and she was said to have wanted to get rid of Crystal, but never did Brooks say anything. And so it was a tough case, and they got a guilty conviction. And so when I see that, and I see all this circumstantial evidence with this case, I wonder, and it was also 10 years before he was tried.
Oh, 10 years. Why
10
was
years.
it so long?
Because there was no body, there was no crime scene. It was like no motive. Like, what are we going to do? But there was all these rumors and innuendos, and she said she wanted to get rid, and he said he's going to pay somebody to move her car, but it wasn't like he said he was going to pay somebody to hurt her. So there were just all these little, as you said, puzzle pieces in
breadcrumbs.
But yeah. I'm thinking, hey, if they could do it in Kentucky, I mean, of course, everyone deserves their day in court. Wendi Adelson and everybody, but Donna Adelson is getting hers now. But it just seems like, to me, there's more in this case than there was in that one, and they got a guilty.
The jury is going to have to draw the right inferences to get here, unless there's evidence that we don't know about that the state has. It's really going to have, because it's not just the pieces, it's inferences from them that the jury is going to have to use to get there. I would say that another piece of the evidence is Lacass's description of how edgy Wendi was and her unwillingness to leave Tallahassee over the time that the murder occurred. And also that she was, as far as I can tell, the only person in a position to know that Dan Markel was going to be in town when the two hitmen came up from Miami. I mean, they're not going to make a trip from Miami to Tallahassee on a whim or on a guess that they're going to find him there. He traveled a lot professionally. So it appears as though someone would have had to have information that he was going to be in Tallahassee that period of time. And I don't think of the people that we know about that are involved here, that there would be anybody besides Wendi who would be able to provide that information. And as I recall, she verified with him that he was going to be in town.
Yeah, there's that text where she asked specifically, are you going to be in town during these dates? Because I want to take the kiddos somewhere on Wednesday. I'm like, then why do you have to have this like 4-day or whatever span of time of knowing where he's going to be if you just are concerned about Wednesday, taking the kiddos somewhere, whatever.
So that's my second or my third, I guess, because I think the first one is she was the one who benefited most. Dawn, do you have another piece of evidence too?
Yeah, so from Judy's document, the second main point is information from Jeff Lacass, which ties right into exactly what you were just talking about. Jeffrey talked about all of her behavior. She even asked Jeffrey, are you going to be in town on Friday? So it was like she wanted to be in control of who was where on that day. It was very important for her to, according to Judy's notes, Wendi expressed hatred for Tallahassee, told Jeff she would only leave if something happened to Danny, and allegedly mentioned Charlie looking into hiring a hitman. She exhibited unusual behavior and crying before the murder, and canceled a trip to California with his family to stay in Tallahassee, even though they would have been home by Thursday night, I believe. And then Jeff mentioned Wendi's family's dislike for Dan extreme dislike. They hated him, he said. And she allegedly texted Dan about his availability, as you mentioned, around the murder date while at her parents' condo.
That was interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And who is it that I think will be able to verify a little of this? Let me think about it a little. Judy, you have something you want to add to this?
Yeah. Well, we're still playing that video that I made when
Yeah.
Fancy drove me around during
shortcut.
Charlie's trial. Yeah. Yeah. So I think so there's, I think, was that Geiger's house? Well, we're right around where Dan
Right.
Markel's house is or was. And then we turned around and then continued driving back east on Trescott to Centerfield, and you turn right and right again to get to the ABC liquor store. Yeah, but this is a residential place, with a speed bump. There are cars parked on the sides of the streets. It's kind of winding. So I know a couple of people did say that it was a shortcut, sort of, but to us, it's like, this isn't a real shortcut at all because you have to drive pretty slowly down this street.
Well, whether it's a shortcut or not, why is she making up different answers every time?
And why is she there? There's no reason for her to be driving there if she's in a rush to go to lunch.
And it's only a shortcut if you're down there already and you think you can miss the traffic light on Prescott by cutting in. And then the question is whether the speed bumps would slow you up more than whatever the traffic would be to get to the traffic light and then make a right turn. But it's not a shortcut if you're starting where she started at her house to get to lunch. There's no way you can make that claim.
Yeah.
She said in her police interview after saying that she was going to drive by, she literally said those words. She then said something about it being a shortcut, and then also something about, well, because Isom said a shortcut. What? He was questioning it, but then she said, well, I kind of like to just drive by there and, kind of for the sake of nostalgia, which of course.
Yeah.
Nostalgia for a husband she can't stand.
That she hates. Right.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I have a third that I've been sort of pondering for a while, and that is they leave town virtually. Is it the day after the murder, or is it 2 days? Because they have that celebration of life or whatever it was, and then they leave town that afternoon. Is that right, Judy?
Well, no, they left town the next day, which was Monday. Dan was shot on Friday.
Right.
Then he died in the middle of the night. Technically Saturday around, I don't know, 1:30 in the morning ish.
And what I've been pondering, particularly since the confiscation of Donna's, I don't know what to call those ledgers, where she's got everything planned out in detail, right? The note, whatever we call those things, whether Donna, if not Wendi, would have planned to leave town and not have things set up, whether it's movers or, somewhere where they're going to live when they get to Miami. And I know that they bought that townhouse right around the same time, but the kids for school or, all the kinds of things that you would plan ahead if you were making a move. I would not be surprised that the state looks, or may have looked, that they will find things to indicate that Donna and Wendi and Harvey had things in place suggesting they were moving at a point at which they should not have known she was going to be in a position to move.
Yeah, well, somebody who lives down in South Florida mentioned that the schools start pretty early there. So that does make it more suspicious that, they had to time this so that the kids could get registered and start school. So who knows if there were inquiries already made. Plus, we've seen a lease contract that Harvey signed in May to get that 2-bedroom condo that I think was maybe down the street or across the street from the school the kids went to. So if that's all true, And I've seen the actual contracts thanks to YouTubers like True Lifestyles.
I just wonder if there's more like that, planning ahead of time that would say, and I don't know that they would turn the electricity off at the house she was leaving, but those kinds of things that when you make a move or get the electricity turned on in the townhouse at a time in which they shouldn't have known that they were going to be leaving on that Saturday or whatever it was. So I'm hoping, I don't know, I expect that the state has been looking into it, and I'm hoping they have information like that, which I think would be pretty persuasive evidence as to, running to knowledge that the murder was going to occur.
Yeah.
And sure, Donna was organized, so she wrote everything down, right?
Right.
Yeah, she plotted, and she also left tons of breadcrumbs. Yeah. So this is the liquor store where Wendi bought the bullet rye whiskey. So I just stopped it there. Let me put this into the chat here. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Defo. Really appreciate that. Okay, so this is where. Yeah, so if I make a comment, it also shows up as Dawn's too, since we're both live streaming this.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go ahead and keep playing this. This is kind of a long video, so it kind of shows you what a long drive it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, what else were we going to mention? Oh, yes, I had this in my document also. This is a small tidbit, but thanks to Mentor Lawyer, Deep Dive True Crime, he showed us the police interview of someone named Ryan. It's a woman who's an attorney. I think her last name's Cox, but I'm not sure. But her tidbit of info was that Wendi stopped by the day before the shooting to drop off her son's hand-me-down clothes, like she's cleaning out, and I suspect that whole week she didn't want Lacass to be in touch with her because she didn't want him to see her cleaning up the house and packing up stuff, getting things ready. There's also a part of Ruth Markel's book, which I hope everybody has read by now, where she mentions how tidy and, it sounds kind of odd, but there weren't many toys in the living room. There wasn't much decoration. The house looked like a rental. Her place was neat and tidy, verging on empty. It felt very different from Dan's house, where it was clear from the playthings everywhere that two little kids lived there happily. So again, it just seems suspicious that she probably was packing and plotting and making calls with her family that whole week.
And Jeffrey said that she claimed to have lost her keys. And so he couldn't go in. They had a date planned. I think it was, I can't remember which day it was, but shortly before. And they ended up having their date out on the porch because she wouldn't let him in. That stood out to me too. That was part of his lengthy police interviews.
Yeah, that supposedly she had locked herself out, and then she was like, well, let's just meet at yoga instead.
Yeah, where and that too, yeah.
They had the most awkward yoga session. And then she basically dumped him. And asked him
and then said, but are you going to be around Friday?
Yeah, are you still leaving on Friday? Are you still going on your trip on Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still believe she did try to set up Jeff in some respect. I mean, I'm sure ultimately he would have been exonerated pretty quickly, but, she just wanted to divert attention from the true culprits by coming up with all these ideas, planting little ideas or seeds, claiming that, oh, it could have been Jeff. Yeah, that's right, Jane. Yeah, he is a jealous guy. He's a stalker or whatever. Yeah. So, let's see. So we're still playing this. I think in this video part, we're driving from ABC Liquor towards the gas station. I think it was at Circle K where Wendi stopped and bought some super glue. So once again, it's like you're in such a rush, but it seemed like she was carefully plotting out alibis for that whole morning so she could have some sort of trail of what she's doing. Mm-hmm.
So, Dawn, do you have another item to add?
So the next category that Judy had brought to our attention is the TV repair alibi. I was just thinking maybe she got the super glue to fix the TV screen.
That'd be ridiculous. Yeah.
So this is Judy described this as a ridiculous alibi with the TV appearing deliberately damaged. I personally can envision Wendi taking a sledgehammer to that television. I really can see that.
Yeah.
But in my imagination, and Wendi insisting on fixing it despite its poor condition. The TV was also seen as a code word for the murder in some of the phone calls. And Jeff also in his interviews talked about that screen being broken. So she made sure that he saw that the screen was broken and made them kids watch some show with this horrible distortion from the broken screen.
Right. And with regard to the TV, the situation at the house, I mean, you've got, first of all, this is another, this family has more silly explanations for things than I think I've seen in a trial in a long time. Donna and Wendi combined. The idea that, I mean, I think Jeff Lacass said the TV didn't seem to be a very expensive TV. You know how even 10 or 12 years ago, you could get a TV without it costing you, a fortune. But the idea that she thought she could replace the screen on a TV plus the repair time for less money than it would cost to just go buy a new TV and start fresh and not have the inconvenience just seems to be silly. But in addition to that, she calls Charlie while the repair person is there to ask what he thinks. And I think, what was he, Judy? He was on the phone about 11, 13 minutes with him. Who 18. Does that when you, 18, better yet, who does that when you have a repair person in your house waiting to know what you're going to do and you get on the phone, and talk to your brother for 18 minutes about what? Couldn't have been, should I get this TV repaired or not? So another silly explanation.
Yeah. And also, I've mentioned this before, but apparently Donna made the Geek Squad appointment for Wendi and told her, hey, your TV repair is going to happen at this time. And I feel like that was done deliberately because if Wendi had called up the Best Buy, they would have asked her immediately, what's wrong with your TV? And then she would have said, oh, the screen is broken or cracked. And then they would have said, sorry, there's nothing we can do. So there goes her whole alibi. So that's why she needed her mom to be the one to set up this appointment for her. That's just my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she seemed to want to share so much detail about the Geek Squad employee with Isom at her police interview. So she was so ready to share his card and his number. So she wanted to make sure she had that alibi in place. Yet that's what it appeared to me. Because with all of this going on, why would you even, I can't imagine myself even thinking about those kinds of things. Oh, I have his card. I have his number. It just was implausible. And how difficult is it? Why would you need the entire family to weigh in on something that unsubstantial?
It's like cheap TV that is busted. It's like, oh, hey, everybody, we got to have some phone calls here. And I got to consult my periodontist brother on Friday morning when he's probably working, to ask him, should I replace it or fix it when you can't fix it? Yeah, it was just so ridiculous. That sounds like some sort of ploy that Donna would have cooked up because since she's older, perhaps she didn't know about technology and thought that would make a great reason. Don't you think that it's so stupid that it probably got thought of by Donna?
Well, Charlie was pretty good at making up stupid things
Stupid
too.
stuff too. Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to say. It's
Yeah.
hard to say.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, we're almost done with this video. I think we're still getting closer to Mosaic. So it just goes to show you what a long drive it was, what a circuitous drive it
Right.
was for Wendi to take just to meet her friends for lunch. Okay, I think that white building is where the restaurant was on the left.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. So I'll take this down and we can put up the document.
It's a great video.
Yeah.
There should be a companion video. They should run them both on the screen at the same time, showing the time it would take for her to leave her house and go the direct route to Mosaic.
Mhm.
Ah,
That would be
Well-
a great visual.
Yeah. Well, Joe, isn't it true that sometimes in trials they'll take the jurors on a field trip to actually see things or places where things occurred?
Yeah, it's not common. Judges don't like to do it, partly because of all the logistics involved, partly because, and this would certainly be the case here, you're 11 years out, and the road will be different. Some of the things you're going to see will be different. So it can be distracting, because then you would have to say, gee, well, Mosaic is not there anymore. And I think I heard Jared say that one of the liquor stores is not there anymore. So, I mean, it would make it pretty difficult to do it. But yes, the O.J. Simpson jury went to the house to see what the house looked like
right.
during that trial. And you can play. I mean, that's a good example. In that one, he apparently had pictures of all his friends, and a lot of his friends were not African American because he was not active in that social group, and they took those all down and they put up other pictures. So judges are not thrilled with doing it, but it can happen.
Mhm.
At the very least, because this is where she wants to, Wendy's differing testimonies has introduced all this confusion about what can you see from where. So
Right.
at the very least, to have them look at the house from where the crime scene tape was. I mean, but certainly video these days, you can do a lot with video.
Mhm.
But I would love to see them at least just go right up to it like you did, Judy. You're like, this is where it was. She would have had to have seen it, just like the officer testified to.
Yeah.
So,
And at least one of the trials, Officer Brannon also said that, from where the car turned, she would have been able to see the commotion, to see that something's going on. It's not just a downed tree or, something's blocked off, but rather you would see all these police vehicles and the people gathering evidence. They had their fans there. So something serious was going on.
Right.
yeah.
So not to be a wet blanket here, a good bit of what we're talking about now would go to her knowledge, but to convict of a conspiracy, there has to be more than knowledge. You have to do an act. You have to be at least in some way active in the conspiracy. So the knowledge is helpful, but knowledge alone doesn't get you convicted of the crime. So going to the house, even if she knew that the murder was going to happen and she just wanted to confirm it, unless the state can show that she was doing it to alert the family that it was done. But even that doesn't seem to me to be a strong indication of doing something in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder, because the murder would have happened. So we need to think about the things that go to an element of the crime itself. And I do think the evidence that she would be the only one who would have known that Dan was going to be in town, and that the hitman knew that he was going to be there, would be something that would be an act in furtherance that would tie her to the conspiracy. That one isn't simply knowledge if the state can prove it to the jury's satisfaction.
Right. I was going to ask about that, and thank you for that, because that also might be why they wouldn't want to put too much attention on going to the home and whether she could see it or not, because that's really only a very small part of painting the picture.
But it's really, when you're doing a trial, it isn't simply the elements, it's casting the picture that the jury then can put the elements in. Judy was talking about all the little pieces. Well, the jury's got to, you have to be doing more than showing there all these little pieces. You have to provide a picture so the jury can see how the pieces fit. And so going to the home would help that, I think, but it wouldn't be in itself an element that would show that she did an act in furtherance of, or that she was intending to further. That has to be something else. But once you have it, then the rest is great context, I think.
Well, I mean, sure, we all want more direct evidence, but I think the fact that she was fishing for Dan's schedule and Lacass mentioning how she was so adamant that it was so strange to him. Why do you have to be in town on July 18th? Something is about to happen. There's something weird or unusual about that date. Why is it so important to her?
Right.
Like, he felt
Judy,
like there were drum beats.
That again, the first one I agree with goes to an element. The second shows that she knew something was going to happen and she wanted to be there. Unless there's something in the evidence that shows her being there was a part of the plan in some way, that goes to knowledge. And I do think there's enough here to show that she had knowledge that something was going on, but you need that other piece.
Yeah. Well, what about, well, so here's the thing. I understand Louis Rivera did not have direct contact with Wendi, but he did mention Wendi multiple times. He also mentioned the lady who wants her kids back. We knew that we had to kill this guy by Friday because he's going out of town that weekend. So, it does make you very suspicious that even the hitman mentioned Wendi. And, he was kind of waffling back and forth as to whether he thought Sigfredo knew Wendi. But he did say that Sigfredo pointed to some woman on the street that they saw. And Sigfredo said, that's Wendi. That's the lady we're doing this job for. And Sigfredo allegedly called Katie to say, what's this lady doing here? Why is she looking at us funny? And Katie supposedly said, oh, she's just making sure that the job's going to get done. So unfortunately, I don't know if Katie remembers this because she didn't mention it in her proffer, but that's what Louis said. So, Joe, can't Louis still testify about those things since he's a co-conspirator?
Oh, sure. He's going to be able to testify to everything he testified to before. Whether he knows something else that they haven't asked him about, I'm a little doubtful because I think they would have wanted him to say everything they could, certainly in Katie's trial and then in Charlie's trial. So I don't know that he has anything more to offer. I mean, he also talked about the piece of paper that Sigfredo had, with, I sounded like it was a diagram of some sort or something that, so they could find the house. But it's got to get back to Wendi. The person that it would be really helpful to have as a witness in Wendi's trial would be Sigfredo. And he doesn't seem to, want to participate. Now, his appeals are almost run. And one could hope that if he no longer has sees a chance of his conviction being overturned, that he might then be willing, even though, in prison, the fact that you're a snitch can get you killed, but he might then be willing to help Katie because, they still have the kids. Presumably he still, he still cares about her. And that would be really helpful because he's the one, I think, that we haven't heard from who might have something direct and concrete to give, not counting Donna and Harvey and Charlie.
Yeah, I don't feel so optimistic about Sigfredo just because, he was a total druggie, crackhead or did lots of cocaine, lots of alcohol. So, but Bishan Mama makes a good point, which I did put also in the document, that Shadrach Nobles, the guy who was in the motel room with Sigfredo and Lewis doing drugs,
Right.
he overheard Sigfredo and Lewis after Sigfredo shot a hole in the Prius, talking about, well, can't the lady come get it? Or why can't you call the lady, who
Right.
I guess we assume would have been Wendi, but we're not 100% sure. But who else would it have been? Like
Donna.
Well, no, because they were in Tallahassee. So how could
That's
Donna
true. You're
help
right.
them with
You're
the
right.
broken
Yeah.
down car? Yeah, I was going to bring that point up.
Yeah, you're right.
Roderick. And she was the only one there. Charlie and Donna were both in Miami.
Right. You are
So,
right.
I know that one stuck out to me too, Mr. Shadrach Nobles and his little blurbs there. But he mentioned, so he knew of her too. So they were talking about her. So that even says a lot, not just that he mentioned it that one time. For him to mention this as a possibility, he must have known more, because they were chatting it up about this woman in Tallahassee.
Well, how about, I know it's so hard to stay in chronological order because there are so many pieces of info here, but what about Wendy's police interview where she made that game changer remark? I thought that was so interesting when Julia Cowley, the retired FBI agent, made a comment on Jay's live stream when they were picking apart Wendy's police interview, that Sarah Latour, the victim advocate, made some comment about how Dan's not dead yet. Like there's a chance like he could survive or something. Then they said a couple of sentences, and Wendy said, "Oh, that would be a game changer."
Yeah, I really wish that they had not told her so quickly that he wasn't going to survive. And I think that's indicative of the fact that Isom didn't see her as a suspect then.
Yeah.
Because that would have been very helpful to see how she would have handled it if she thought he might live, what she would have said and what they might have gotten from her. But he immediately told her. I think in that interview, it wasn't very long at all.
Yeah,
before
like
he told
he's
her.
not going to survive, or we don't think he's going to survive.
Right.
Yeah.
When I was watching that interview, I kept screaming that too. He's not dead. But the other thing is she seemed to know that think that he was dead, even though what Isom told her was he might not survive. He's not dead. Now, how would she know that if she didn't hear that from somebody who saw what they did to him?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think it would have been wonderful from the point of view of a successful prosecution of Wendi if the timing on the visit to the street would have been a little different, because apparently the timing when Katie is told that it has happened, when Sigfredo calls her and she says, "I know," the timing was such that it looks like now maybe the state will be able to do something with it. But as I recall, the timing is such, it doesn't look as though the call could have come from Wendi. From the timing that they give of when she got to the street, that Katie already knew that. And so I hope that they can do something with that, because that would be very, very strong evidence if they could do that.
Yeah. The only way to clear up the confusion would be if Katie remembered this. Like, yeah, Charlie sent me a WhatsApp message or called me on the burner phone and told me, Wendi had confirmed that Dan was shot. But so far as I know, Katie didn't say that.
Right.
So,
It would even be helpful, Judy, if she could remember that Charlie called her, because the question then would be, how would he know before Sigfredo called? I mean, the only person we know that would know that something happened, because it was, the timing is pretty close. It isn't as though there would have been, I doubt there would have been news stories about it already, would have been from Wendi. So,
I mean,
we'll see.
they were going to pay $100,000 or $138,000 to kill Dan, and supposedly this was maybe the second or third attempt to kill him. So why wouldn't they want to confirm that the job had been done before paying such a big chunk of money?
Right.
So, yeah. Well, what about just her general demeanor? I know that's not good evidence of whether she was involved, but it certainly shows that something's wrong there. I thought the fact that she so quickly started howling and, just overboard, like being so emotional as soon as she heard that Dan had been shot, that seemed bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right, again, and she didn't know that he was dead.
Yeah, he hadn't died yet.
Acting like, and even that, for me, it seems like if you get, anytime I've gotten really bad news, it sets you back a little. You have to process it a little before you start crying. There's a process, but everyone's different. It didn't seem real to me when I looked at those interviews 100 times of her. It didn't seem real unless she knew something. I always wondered if, okay, first of all, they all had different phones that never were recovered, and that's how they were communicating. I don't think they were relying on Wendi to confirm that Dan was killed. I think somebody else at the scene would have had to do that, because she only could confirm that the police were there and something happened.
But the two killers had no contact with Charlie.
Well, that we know of, unless there's some other phone or some other way. Or
yeah, but you have to then.
Katie has another phone.
Except that Sigfredo did that murder for Katie's lover. And Katie says she doesn't tell him who, and that Charlie didn't know that it was her, common law husband that was going to do the killing. So to do that, you would have to assume that Sigfredo knew and was okay with it because Katie wanted it done, which I think would be, I'd have a little trouble believing that's what occurred. And there has to be the two of them or Wendi, because, well, I was going to say that no sensible murderer would send another person out who has no involvement to confirm it was done, because now you've got more people involved who know about your guilt. But
well, I will say that's true, very true, and I agree. When I was first watching her police interviews a million years ago, I had this sense, and this doesn't mean anything, but I had this sense that somebody was there to witness it, and it might have been somebody outside of Luis and Sigfredo that confirmed it to somehow or another to the family. I don't know, but I just had that feeling.
Okay. Adelsons definitely would not have just given out their money so readily, especially if they had really been ripped off the previous year. Yeah. So, and Lewis did say that they had burner phones, or Sigfredo or Katie or both of them had burner phones also. So who knows what's out there. Yeah. So can we move on to what Jeff Lacass said?
Sure. What did Jeff?
Well, I felt like Jeff Lacass, how does he pronounce his name? Lacass. Yeah, he was very intuitive, and he remembered a lot of details because it was so disturbing for him. And he voluntarily went back to the police multiple times to share his information, which is very commendable, because many people just don't want to get involved, and they're not going to voluntarily go to the police. So I've rewatched his police interviews again this weekend, and there was just so much information that he gave, and I found him very credible about, how much when he hated Tallahassee, She felt totally stuck there. And the only way she could leave would be if something happened to Danny. So why would she say that so soon before Danny actually got killed? It sounds bizarre because, in my opinion, she knew something was going to happen.
Right, especially since he said that Wendi told Jeff that Charlie had already looked into hiring a hitman.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah,
week before. Yeah.
exactly. And it's also weird that why would she keep repeating this hitman joke? When lo and behold, he is killed by a hitman. Is that just a coincidence that, she thought it was funny to bring up here and there to see how Jeff would react, I think. Um, so so despite Wendi acting on the stand that she liked it, she liked Tallahassee. Jeff said that she would give off that impression to other people, but as soon as the doors closed, like one of the biggest conversational topics was how much she hated being stuck there.
Yeah.
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 She blurted out about Charlie joking around about hiring a hitman to ice him within the first 5 minutes of her police interview after saying that she was going to drive by Prescott.
Yeah.
She said a lot there.
Mhm. Yeah. And then to some people who are just looking at the case at a very superficial level, they might say, well, look, see how innocent she is? Because, why would she bring up her brother like she was trying to help the police? But, once again, Jeff said that she loves playing mind games. She's a very manipulative person who lies all the time, plants these little eggs, Easter eggs or something, likes to manipulate people into thinking certain things. So it kind of makes sense that she would try to point a little bit of suspicion at her own family members so that it seems like, oh, she's being so honest and helpful here.
Well, and she also has to cover herself because she mentioned it to, did she mention it to the TV repairman? I mean, she talked to a couple of people about her brother telling that joke. So if she hadn't said something at that interview with Isom, they would have been back to her or wondered why she didn't share it when they got it from Lacass, or they might have gotten it from others. And she knew it and didn't say it. So, I mean, it seems as though if she was thinking that would be something that she would feel the need to share.
Yeah, it was definitely came off as preemptive, for sure.
Right. Good way to put it.
Softening the blow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I totally encourage people to rewatch Lacass's full police interview. There's multiple channels that have it, but Deep Dive True Crime was the first one to get this type of information. I think originally he edited it because he didn't want to give out too many embarrassing parts, but then later other YouTubers just showed the whole thing. So now he also has the whole complete trilogy up, which you can see on Deep Dive True Crime. And I wanted to play a little bit of it. I hope you guys can hear it, but let's just listen to like 4 minutes of this, if that's okay. So let's see. Okay, here we go. Let me know if you can hear it.
It's just uncanny to think back on it. It's gonna happen. Like, it feels like there's drum beats. It feels like they're moving towards something. It's really, really strange. I don't know what's going on. And one of the strange things that happened was we had a trip to California scheduled to see my parents the week that Danny was killed. And in early June, she rescheduled that trip. And I said, what's the problem with the trip? She says, well, I'm worried we'll get stuck in the airport and we won't be back on Friday. I have to pick up the kids from school. I said, but we're coming back Thursday night. It's not winter. I'm not going to in the winter. I would understand. There's no way we're going to get, and we can rent a car. We have friends that babies. That's just strange. I said, fine, cancel the trip.
And that was going to be in early June.
The trip was going to be the week that Danny was killed.
Oh, okay. That was the trip.
11th to 19th was supposed to be the trip. So we had a trip planned, and she was real strange. about the fact that we had to reschedule this trip. It just didn't make sense. And I even said, if you just don't want to go because you don't feel comfortable right now, just tell me. That's cool. She goes, no, I have to pick up the kids from school that day. I just have to. I don't want to do anything to stop that. And she said, I'll miss the kids at that point. I said, okay. A couple of days later, I say, well, she said, but I want to spend that time with you. I was leaving for Tennessee on Friday. She said, I want to spend that Monday through Thursday with you. I said, great. What, you want to go to St. Augustine? She loves the beach. She hates Tallahassee. This again, it's just very strange and suspicious to me. Wendi Adelson tells me, what I want to do is a staycation. I want to stay home in Tallahassee. I said, you want to stay in Tallahassee the hottest week of the year? Because yeah, we'll go to Tom Brown Park, we'll do this. I said, you hate it here. I'm offering to take you away. Why wouldn't you? It's just really strange at the time. I was saying to my friends, like, Wendi was. People laugh. I said, Wendi says she wants to stay in Tallahassee. She leaves town. Sure, you know, every chance she gets, she leaves town. Why would she want to stay? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. Finally managed to convince her to do a trip to St. Augustine, but we had to schedule it so that we were back basically by the time of the shooting. So that was just strange. It was peculiar at the time. When we scheduled that trip to St. Augustine, I'm sitting there, she has her calendar open. We had to schedule everything with her. That's just how she was. It was just at the time, I remember sitting in her office trying to schedule this, and there's this weirdness about that weekend. She was scheduled other things, no problem. But that weekend, she just was intent on. That day meant something to me before Danny was shot. Like, there's something weird about that week. I don't know what it is. There's something weird about that week. If we keep going through June, other things I noticed in June that were really crazy.
Let me back up a second so I get this right.
Yeah.
July 11th through 19th, you're supposed to go to California. Leave on the 11th, come back on the 19th.
I can look it up for you. It might be 12th to 19th, but it was the week that Danny was shot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when is she saying I can't do it? What date? What date are we talking about when she's telling you I can't?
Early June. I can pull up the exact
Early
date.
June.
Early June. Yeah.
So you're supposed to go to California with her, just you two.
Yeah. Plane tickets purchased. She sat me down. I think it was June 5th or 7th. I will find out for you if you would like.
Yeah.
And she just said, I can't do that, and it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make any sense.
So she'd already said that date was that window of.
He said, this is the one week I have to go see your parents. And I said,
11th through the 19th.
but that was in May we booked that. Then we have the flight. I find out about Danielle Sack. And afterwards she says, I feel comfortable with that. She just had an appointment with her therapist, and she said, my main concern is I want to be able to see the kids on that day, the day that Danny was shot. We had people volunteering to babysit if they needed to, if we were delayed. We weren't going to be delayed. And she insisted it was not because she didn't want to go with me. She wanted to spend that week with me. She just wanted to spend that week with me in Tallahassee. She did not want to leave Tallahassee that week.
Okay.
And there's 3 different times. There's that time, then there's the staycation thing where I'm like, what are you talking about? That's bizarre. And then there was which we scheduled the trip to St. Augustine. And fast forward a little bit, and we had the trip to St. Augustine planned until July 15th or 16th, and she canceled that the last second. So 3 different times she canceled plans with me. The trip we did very began.
So what you're leading to is this is highly suspicious that she needs to be here on the 18th of July.
Yeah, just anecdotally, subjectively, whatever it's worth, it was really weird. It was really strange. I know this woman, I know her really well. And there was something at the time. Me saying to my friends, what's going on? It's just really, really strange. It's just really.
She'd never done anything like this before.
No, she had canceled and recanceled. She did that all the time. Completely disorganized person, but it usually made sense. Usually had a reason, and usually the reason was something about court with Danny, or parents wanted to come down to South Florida. Every other time but this, I understood. This time it was completely posted. Didn't make sense, and it was very, very strange.
Okay, so she cancels this trip to California. Did you go anywhere? No.
Okay, any comments?
Well, this was when he came back. So this wasn't the first interview. So this was in 2015.
This was March?
Yeah, March of 2015. He came back because he had thought about these things, and these are things that were haunting him, it felt like. And he was saying, I knew her very well, and this was the only time that this happened. There were always reasons why she would cancel or change dates, but that 3 times they had to change that date. So his conscience, or whatever you would call that, was just bothering him so much. He just felt like he had to share this. It was so compelling to me.
Yeah.
Again, it's not proof of anything.
Still
It's-
proof. That's still evidence that he can talk about.
It's
at the
evidence,
time.
but it's just, as he said, he was puzzled by it. He thought it was really strange. I'm glad he came back. I mean, he came back on his own accord. No one asked him to come back, and he just went back to the police station and said, "Look," and he had all his statements written down. So, to that alone, you can just feel that with him come through in his words. That alone was convincing that he wasn't just making something up or making up or exaggerating his story.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty compelling, his description of her reaction, which fits into, that she knew that something was going on, and she felt that she needed to be there. And he did other things like that. I mean, he describes her behavior at the dinner where she vomited, So he's got a lot of descriptions. And one of the things that I think that he'll be able to testify to, which I think is pretty strong, is her telling him that Charlie not only told a joke about killing Dan Markel, but also seriously talked about killing Dan Markel. And not only, I think, will he be credible saying it, but he talked to somebody back at the sociology department about it. So he's got an independent, at the time, corroboration of what he heard her say. It's not an after the fact made up, because there's somebody who can corroborate that he came back and said it, and worried about what he should do. Should he call the police or should he not call the police? And that's pretty, I think, powerful evidence, obviously, that Charlie was involved, and also that Wendi knew what was happening.
That she, yeah. And he also had extemporaneous, right there in that little segment that Judy just played, that he talked to his friends. Why is she acting so strange? Why doesn't she want to go on? Does she want to go on the trip? Does she not want to go on the trip? So he also mentioned several times in that case and in other instances of his accounts where he was talking to his friends about these things.
Right. I also would add, in terms of the context here, that the timing of the murder is coming around the time that in the divorce proceedings, Stephen Webster is trying to get information about whether she was withholding information in front of the judge with regard to assets. And there was supposed to be a hearing on that, I believe, pretty close after the date at which Dan was murdered, which also, again, looks suspicious in terms of the whole picture. And I would add, I've said this before, if the jury puts the puzzle pieces in some sort of order, her affect on the stand and some of the things she did the day of the murder will certainly, I believe, lead the jurors to think she is somebody who could be doing this. I mean, you're at that interview with Isom. You've just supposedly learned that your husband has been shot and is going to die. And she's talking about the young man at the liquor store, admiring her blue eyes.
Yeah.
Who does that? I mean, it's just
right.
So, I mean, those sorts of things, I think, if the jury gets to the place where they think the circumstantial case looks like it can be made, and then they have to evaluate whether they think, that it's beyond a reasonable doubt, her behavior on the stand and the description of how she acted along the way and at the day of that interview will certainly not impede the jury from coming to that conclusion.
They can play, instead of transcripts from Wendy's police interview, which Georgia has referred to in her direct examination of Wendi, they can actually play video clips from that police interrogation video or interview correct?
Yes.
And would they be able to also play video clips of prior testimony on the stand in the prior trials?
To impeach her, I believe that they will be able to do it because the grant of immunity requires that you testify truthfully.
Right.
And if you're going to impeach because there have been conflicting statements made, I think they will be able to use it. I mean, there's going to be some issue about it because she's got the immunity, some issue whether it's just that she isn't remembering. I mean, the day was stressful and you know, it was long ago as compared to intentionally lying. And that the breach of the agreement would be lying, not mistaking or not remembering. So they'd have to get over that hump, but potentially, yes.
Great.
Thanks for that great explanation. That's why everybody was fawning over Jo Potuto on SDS. Jo, how did you wind up being in charge of that whole live stream by yourself?
Well, the Waldmans were going on vacation. They're in Asheville. And we had already agreed. I had said I can comment on the hearings. I can comment throughout the trial. So we had already agreed. They were leaving. So then they asked if I would just do it on my own. And I said, I'll give it a shot. I mean, I like to talk and I like to watch the hearings. I mean, I'm just intrigued at particularly what the lawyers do and don't do. That just intrigues me. So I was going to watch it anyway. And so I said, yeah, I mean, the worst that could happen is that I fall on my face and make a fool of myself, but that won't be the first time and it won't be the last time. And, you know, I can live with that. So that's how it happened.
No, I don't think you would make a fool of yourself at all. I mean, you know more about the law than 99% of the viewers there. So, you know, here's a question for Jo Potuto. What is your theory on why Wendi dropped Charlie in the grease at her initial interview?
I assume that means saying that her brother had made the joke about killing Dan Markel, but buying her a TV was less expensive. I think a couple of things. One that I mentioned before, she had already said that to others. I think she said it to Lacass. And so her failure to say it at that interview when Isom asked who might have wanted to kill your ex-husband would have looked odd. So I think that was partly it. Partly, I just think even though I believe she did know that murder was going to happen, she was not prepared for that interview. And she, you know, sort of was kind of a stream of consciousness talking that led her to say it. I've seen some suggest that it was Machiavellian, you know, that she was doing it deliberately to throw her brother under the bus. And I don't know if that's true, but those are three, at least, explanations for what happened or what she said.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And another question for Jo, since you're a law professor, you get all the questions. T. Cancella says they can point out the difference in Wendi's various trial testimony without calling Wendi a liar, right? Just let the jury weigh the reason for the variance from trial to trial. But she had that limited immunity, so they couldn't use that against her as direct
evidence. I'm not sure. I did some checking and some research back when, and I think I talked to a couple of lawyers, some lawyers who have commented on various of shows about this case. And I didn't spend my lifetime looking, but I couldn't find anything that was directly on point on the issue as to whether you could impeach a witness who has immunity because in prior statements made under the grant of immunity, there were variances if they didn't lead to a deliberate lie. The answer could be yes, that you can. I'm just not sure. They certainly can impeach her on anything that she said in that Isom interview that's in conflict because she was not talking to Isom under any protection of immunity. So that one for sure. The others, I'm just not positive one way or the other. And there may be somebody in the chat who knows this area better who can answer it, but it doesn't come up all that often. So there isn't a lot of law on it. And I couldn't find anything in the quick research that I did.
Thank you. Okay, another question for you. Do you think the defense is going to pull a fast move at the 11th hour for another delay or hiring new counsel for Donna? Gosh, I hope not.
I don't think Donna can say, I want new lawyers at the 11th hour. So I don't think she's going to be able to do it. I don't think they want to do it. I mean, they took on this defense. I mean, lawyers don't typically say, gee, now that I've been doing it and I've invested all this time, I really don't want to do it anymore. And they're not, they've got an ethical responsibility. They just can't say, gee, I've been doing it for the last 6 or 8 months, but you know what? I've changed my mind. So from their point of view, it would have to be significant before it could happen. The only thing I can see on the horizon that might implicate the trial date. And I say this only as a possibility. You heard everybody who watched that hearing yesterday or the other day. Everett was very clear he intends for it to go. But the only thing that's on the horizon is the new wiretaps or emails, whatever it was, that came after October. Now, there were, let me do a sidetrack here. There were other wiretaps or emails, I'm not sure what they were, that the defense didn't get because the filter team had said there is lawyer-client information here. They never directly asked, they never hired the forensic team back, when they were first hired to look. So those emails, if they want to say now they need more time, my guess is that Everett would say, you've known about these for a while, you just can't, we're not going to hear it. The ones that came after the October investigation, which they have only just gotten, I think those they at least have a credible claim, if they can't get through them, that they need more time, that it's not their fault that they didn't have them, that they asked in June or whatever. I don't think Everett will agree to that either unless they can make a pretty strong showing. And so far, that's why I like watching these. Their showings, they may have a stronger case than they can make, but they're typically are over up here. Conclusory statements rather than pointing to particular concrete pieces of evidence to make the argument. It's not a good way to make an argument if you want the judge to grant you something that the judge is not inclined to do and in law probably doesn't have to do. So long answer. I apologize. I think the trial will go on October 19th. The only possibility, in my view, is the information that the defense has gotten in the last couple of weeks relating to the October investigation. And I think they'd have to make a pretty strong showing for Everett to say, okay, we'll push the trial date back.
Yeah, Everett seemed pretty stern and no nonsense.
Boy, did he ever.
Yeah, good. Well, this is kind of ties into what I also put in my master document thing, was that Wendi would otherwise refuse to testify if she weren't given that limited immunity, right? Because as you heard in her deposition, which Tara Lacass, or not Lacass, Tara Kawas and Christopher DeCoste took Wendi's deposition back in 2019, and Wendi basically refused to answer at least 90% of the questions.
And
she
for
kept asserting.
For those who are watching this who have not seen it, Judy and Joel Waldman did a reenactment of that, where virtually every answer was I assert. And the assert was I assert the privilege against self-incrimination. Yeah. Now, I will say that it doesn't appear to me that the state pushed there, or that Lacass in doing that interrogation or that interview pushed, because I can assert the Fifth Amendment privilege, but that doesn't mean that I really have a valid claim to the privilege. And if you're asking me questions and I assert, you have the right to go to the judge and say, she's asserting a privilege over a bunch of things. We don't think it's a valid assertion. And then the judge would have to review the information and decide that the assertion was either correctly made or not. So it doesn't appear to me that Lacass did that. I mean, excuse me, the lawyers for Katie did that. Had they gone to the judge, it may have been that Wendi would have had to answer a few more questions than she did. We don't know because I don't think they did it. But I say again, if you haven't watched that reenactment, it's really, I mean, I guess for some people it would be, grating because nothing happens. But I found it very entertaining.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Dawn, would you like to say some things? Because I hate it on those shows when one poor guest just has to sit there gathering moss while the other people talk and stuff.
No,
so
no.
You haven't been able to talk
the
as
only
much.
Yeah, the only thing I could add, it was a few questions back, and it was that judges, I've seen in other trials where judges have ordered lawyers to stay on a case even when they wanted to withdraw. And I could see, I don't think that's going to happen here or anything like that, but I don't see Judge Everett budging on the date. And what I've also heard about Judge Everett from other trials and other lawyers in his jurisdiction is that he is a stickler for sticking to those dates. He doesn't like to move dates in general. It's not just this case. That's all.
Okay, so you guys can answer this. If the neighbor hadn't found Dan, when would the murder have been reported? When did Wendi expect it to be reported? When Dan didn't pick the boys up for swimming?
Was he teaching then?
No.
It was in the summer, so he wouldn't have had, it might have been a while, unless he had appointments at school or there was a meeting at school. There wouldn't have been anybody, who would have known he lived alone except for the boys, and the boys certainly wouldn't be reporting it. Could have been a while.
Wasn't there some speculation that is why Wendi went, was because she would have been then the one to find him or something like that? I mean, if she went by,
I don't believe in that. Yeah, but just my opinion, that seems kind of far-fetched, because why would she want to be the one to report it to police? Because then she'd be grilled and looked at as a suspect, more likely.
I don't know, just because she's so weird.
Well, could be. We're just guessing. Yeah, these are all just our conjectures. So
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but that would be, I mean, it was not an amicable divorce.
Right.
She shouldn't have a key to the house anymore. That would be an awfully suspicious circumstance if the ex-wife, who's not getting along with the ex-husband, who's got that divorce file that's, as high as the Empire State Building, happens to be there on the day he's murdered and decides to go look because she's worried about him. I can't imagine that. Even the Adelsons, I can't imagine would have created that scenario.
I've heard that said, so it's just an entertaining thought. I forgot my thought there. Jeff said many times in those interviews that Wendi lacked impulse control. And so as much as she wasn't curious when she saw the police presence and the crime scene tape, she was probably otherwise very curious about what was happening if she had wind of what was going on.
Yeah. Oh, and Lacass did say during his police interview that Wendi did have a key to the house.
Yes.
So that seems a little strange. I guess Dan Markel still trusted her enough to let her have a key to the house. Yeah. So do we know why Wendi is considered as a co-conspirator? Well, we can guess because so much information has been made public. So that's the thing.
What Jo said, and she's the number one beneficiary of Dan's death.
Well, plus they also have all these breadcrumbs leading to her and her suspicious behavior, witnesses talking about her weird behavior and stuff. Yeah, changing the kid's name. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like a tangential issue because it doesn't really show that she helped kill Dan, but it kind of shows how much hatred she had towards Dan. Because even when he was still alive, she seemed to have some sort of contempt or disregard for him. For example, not even mentioning him in her book biography. They're still living together. And her biography says nothing about him and just says she lives in Tallahassee with her 2 boys or something. So let me bring up my nice little document again, since I think we're kind of just jumping around and stuff, especially with the questions. Okay. Yeah. So I did focus a lot on the suspicious behavior with Jeff Lacass and suddenly wanting no communication with him that whole week, but still wanting to know if he's leaving for his trip on Friday. I think we mentioned all this stuff. Oh, and this is something where a long time ago, Fancy Fiction did put up a photo of Wendy's trunk. Do you guys remember seeing that? Where there's a picture of the back of her car open, and all you see is like a small cardboard box with her books in it. And it just seems suspicious because once again, it looks like, was she already plotting to pack up her car and have everything ready to move? It's just a little tiny puzzle piece there, but it seems bizarre because most people who have 2 young children, their car is a complete disaster. I know mine was when my kids were little, whereas there's a picture of Dan's car on Fancy Fiction's post or something. Maybe it was on Patreon, but she had a picture of Dan's car trunk from the investigative file, and his was a mess because that's what you typically expect to see when someone is the parent of 2 young toddlers.
I thought I remember seeing her trunk, the photos of the inside of her car from the day of when she was at the police station. They took photos.
Yeah.
Okay. With those, with the liquor, and weren't there car seats? And I thought there were 2 car seats in the back. I don't know, because she had to pull those car seats out in order to leave with her friend, or they were going to pull the car seats out if she hadn't left to pick up the kids, but she ended up leaving. I thought there were photos of all that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely remembered seeing pictures of the kids' car seats in Dan's car. Yeah, but also, so it's not like a big major aha piece of evidence, but it's another little breadcrumb there. And then, of course, once we saw the probable cause affidavits, there was more bad evidence against Wendi in there, where the detective called Wendi on Monday after Dan's shooting, and the call quickly dropped. So we would assume that she hung up on him. I'm sure she would probably just say that, sometimes people lose reception. But the affidavit says that less than 5 minutes later, her lawyer back then called and said all communications are supposed to go through the lawyer now. And then they never heard back from Wendi or Donna, Harvey. They said they were going to speak with the police that day, but instead they were packing up and leaving town already. So that's the same way Wendi treated Dan Markel's parents and sister. She kept stringing Ruth Markel along about when she could see the kids, and then just saying, oh, not right now. Now's not a good time. Oh, the kids are busy. Oh, you can talk to them. Oh, we're so scared. We're already down in South Florida. Haha. It just seems so callous the way she treated Dan's parents and sister.
Yeah, and if you think about that, unless she was concerned that the house was already packed up in terms of what they were taking, why not let the grandparents see the kids? The kids certainly won't have anything to say about the murder or the plotting of the murder. And it's a compassionate thing to do. And you don't have to tell the Markels that you're leaving if they see the kids. I mean, there really isn't a good reason why she didn't do it, at least for me, except for the fact she didn't want them to get a hint that she was going to be leaving town the next day, and that there may have been, even more packed up at the house. Just doesn't. She could just be a cold person who wanted the grandparents out of their lives, and she was going to start doing it that day. I guess that would be the other explanation.
Yeah.
It's really, that's very heartbreaking and sad. And if you just take like the macro approach of how much access now Donna and Harvey have to these children compared to Dan's parents and Dan's family, again, showing that that's ultimately what she wanted to accomplish. And that is one of the many things that benefited her in her world, by all accounts, from what we've heard about her disdain for not just Tallahassee, but Dan himself and likely his family.
So
Yeah.
Judy, you have that comprehensive list. Are there other things on your list that we need to cover?
Oh, well, it's just so much. I feel like we could be here all night and tomorrow discussing this, and it looks like people enjoy it because we do have over 500 people watching right now, which is great. Thank you guys for caring so much about justice for Dan in this case. So, yeah, we didn't touch on how Lacass said that Wendi ignored him and people were looking at him funny. So then it turned out that Wendi made it sound like she was told not to contact him, and that, there was a rumor that he was like a stalker and maybe he was involved with killing Dan. Then I think he said it was maybe 10 days later that he finally spoke with her. And she said she had changed her cell phone after Dan's murder because she was afraid her phone was bugged. So that just sounds bizarre. If you're the victim's ex-wife and you had nothing to do with it, why would you be so scared that your phone is bugged? It kind of goes along with how she allegedly was wailing and crying to Sarah Youssef soon after getting back to South Florida, crying and saying repeatedly, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. I mean, why would she say that if she had nothing to do with this? How many innocent people are going to be like wailing, like, I'm going to prison, I'm going to prison. Weird. Also, so we're talking again about all these great nuggets of info that Jeff gave to the police. Was that Wendi had cracked a joke at a friend's daughter's bat mitzvah that fall, something about how Danny got his head shot off or got his head blown off. So again, that's similar to what Youssef later said, that Wendi referred to Dan's murder as Danny getting whacked or Dan got whacked, and she had no curiosity about the murder. She misled her about whether she was really cooperating with the police. What else? Like those little snide jokes she made during her writing class podcast, calling him the latex husband. And, well, when people ask me, what does my husband do? Then what should I say? Well, not much. He's dead. It just seems very glib and bizarre and offensive for her to still be making these types of remarks.
Yeah, and that book, which is unlikely to come in at Donna's trial except to impeach, is a different story if Wendi's prosecuted, because they're her words for her trial, and they relate to her state of mind.
Well, can you anticipate that her attorney will file a motion to try to keep out the book?
Sure, but I think, what is clear is her attorney will have a much higher hill to climb than Donna's attorney. Because for Donna, it was not Donna's voice, and it didn't go to Donna's state of mind. For Wendi, it's a different story. So sure, they'll make the motion, but I think if Wendi is prosecuted, at least some parts of that book will get into the evidence at trial.
That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Rosemary. Yes, so definitely the book is also another puzzle piece. She can try to explain it away by saying it's just fiction. But, why is it that you said that you want to share your story? You wanted people to hear about your story, and the main character is so similar to her, and the husband is so similar to Dan Markel. And at the end of the book, the main character also just abruptly dumps her husband and has this baby girl that she adopts, and she pointedly tells him, no, the last name is not going to be Stone, it's going to be Walker. It's going to be my last name. So that's just bizarre. What a coincidence that she wound up legally changing the children's last name also.
And on your previous points about her behavior post-murder and her cruel comments, one of the things that Jeffrey Lacass pointed out in his interviews more than once was her extraordinary lack of empathy, as well as the rest of the family, how they lacked empathy for others and that they were cruel in that way. And so to me, those things are just part of her character. It would be surprising if she were any other way.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary lack of empathy, though. I mean, there are a lot of murders out there, and there are family murders and murders that come out of domestic situations, and husbands who kill wives and wives who kill husbands. But I don't recall another one where the surviving spouse changes the names of the children. This one is just so cold.
Yeah.
And as I recall, and Judy and Dawn, you probably are going to have a better recall than I do. The older boy, when he went to school and they called him Adelson, cried about it.
Yes, that was reported.
Yeah, so it's not only a coldness with regard to the Markel name, her ex-husband, and his family, but it's also a remarkable lack of empathy for her own children and how they're going to feel that their father's name is removed from their lives, and the older one was old enough to recognize it. It's awful.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think that was Deep Dive True Crime who also reported that the child was either crying or screaming or both when he was told at school that his last name had been changed to Adelson. So it's just so sad hearing about that.
Wasn't there a story about when Charlie, Wendi, and Rob were children, and Rob, what was it? Did he find some money and want to give it back?
No, he got too much change from the snack bar at a tennis
Wanted
competition.
to give it back, and they made fun of him mercilessly for having that kind of conscience.
Yeah, because he gave back the change. And I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's like, what kind of lessons do you teach your kids? We've heard so many phone calls between Donna and Charlie that it's like, geez, no wonder the Wendi and Charlie turned out like this, because Donna is just as devious and she seems like a partner in crime with her son. When you hear her chit-chatting with Charlie and gossiping about people and talking about everything and just praising her son, it's just really bizarre. It's sad that they got praised like that.
It is.
Well, and after all these years not returning the Holocaust ring to the Markels, it's just, to me, it's just over the top in callousness. I mean, I don't know how valuable the ring is, but it doesn't have the value in terms of the emotional, pull that it would to the Markel. So why, it's what did Shakespeare call somebody relating to Iago in Othello, that it was motiveless malevolence, and that's how it feels here. It's just, that's how I would describe it: motiveless malevolence, doing it for the sake of the fact that you can,
Right.
without regard to the impact on others.
On the children too. Yeah. So it also seems weird. Like, why would she keep the grandchildren away from Dan's family for about 6 years after Sigfredo got arrested? Like if you had nothing to do with the murder, then why would you do that? It sounds bizarre.
And I would say, even if you have something to do with the murder, the kids don't have a memory. You can assure, when you talk to the grandparents, that they're not going to say anything to indicate that the Adelsons were involved or disparage their mother or anything else. That, you can control that. There just is no reason to exclude them from the lives of those children, and it's harmful. It's harmful and hurtful to the kids.
Well, actually, I think it probably would be hard for Wendi or Donna to have controlled what people were going to say to the kids or what questions the kids could ask of their other grandparents. Or, who knows? Maybe the children did observe a lot of like secretive conversations and stuff. And so Wendi was paranoid that the kids would tell the Markels, like, this is what grandma said, or this is what mom said about this, or whatever. But either way, that just seems kind of bizarre to keep away the grandparents for so long. And then finally, through the attorney, the grandparents got to see the kids, but it seems like it was always a very tightly controlled visitation, maybe like an hour, or getting to have ice cream with the kids, but there had to be a third party present, or Wendi was hanging around in the background. So it's just very, very controlled contact, so that Wendi can then go to trial and say, oh no, everything's great. They've had complete access to the kids and they've been able to see the kids, just like how she invited the grandparents to the older son's bar mitzvah and then rescinded the invitation after the trial. That's what Tara Kawas mentioned after Katie's conviction.
Well, the withholding of grandparents' visitation seems to me to be just like full-on fulfillment of what the whole motive was, right? That was the whole motive, not just to take from the Markel family, but to take Dan out of the picture. And so to me, it's super suspicious. It's not just mean and awful, but if they were to do anything otherwise, I would be surprised given their pattern of behavior with everything else. It's just horrible. It's horrible. Like Joe said, one of the coldest. I've seen a few trials, and it's usually not this bad, and there's some kind of remorse usually. And
usually you expect the parents of the spouse who's acting that way to exercise some sort of, intermediary judgment about, I know that you're angry with him and he's a jerk, but he was the kid's father, and you're going to injure them by severing any contact with their father's family. But her mother was Donna and her father was Harvey, and they're,
right.
So nothing like that happened.
Yeah. And so that's why I liked it when, I think it was Georgia Kappelman who asked Wendi, but you were okay with giving your mother and your brother plenty of access, full access to your children, So according to Sarah Yusuf, besides Wendi's other suspicious behaviors, Wendi allegedly made a comment to her saying, well, what if my crazy brother had something to do with it? So if you're suspecting that your brother had something to do with killing off Dan Markel, then why would you still hang out with your brother and be all buddy-putty with him, as well as your mother? You know, she was totally fine with them having tons of family time with the kids, which also, again, makes me think she knew she was involved with the whole murder. That's why she was totally fine with hanging out with them.
Seems like
Mm-hmm.
that's what it looks like. I mean, for anyone to question why a person like us looking, we can only look at what we know, like publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yeah.
would we question it? Like, what? We'd be crazy not to question this unusual behavior. And
Yeah,
how-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but supposedly she never talked to her family about it because her attorney told her not to. But
Yeah.
in one of the phone calls, didn't Donna say that wasn't true? That her attorney didn't tell her she couldn't talk about Dan's murder with them, something like that. Oh, here's a question. Why is Kawas a witness? So we can only guess, but I'm thinking that perhaps Kawas had some sort of communications with Donna and or Harvey, maybe about payment of legal fees.
You
I mean,
know,
what do you think?
I thought that too, but I rewatched Mentor Lawyer's clip after Katie was convicted, where Tara Kawas is outside the courtroom talking about the case, and she could not have been more emphatic that the money did not come from the Adelsons. I mean, she said it over and over again, and she said, I can't understand why we say no, we say no, we say no, and people still come back and say they paid somehow. And Mentor Lawyer James asked a question. Well, you've got the clip, so I'll just stop and let you run the clip.
Okay, yeah, because, well, there are multiple parts in this video. Please go to Deep Dive True Crime so he can get the watch hours and stuff. But going to that, even if it is true that the Adelsons didn't pay for Katie's legal expenses, we still have both Katie as well as her brother Francis who have said that the Adelsons did offer to pay her legal fees, but they said no. So that's why I think, you know, once again, this is just conjecture. We're just giving our opinions here. That's why I think the state might want to use Kawas as a witness. Yeah. And also, she hasn't filed any sort of motion like, what was it, Oscar Marcus or David Marcus? Yeah, one of those attorneys did file a motion trying to get out of being subpoenaed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's agreeing.
He
Mhm.
tried his best. That was another hearing that I enjoyed a lot because he just tried like crazy.
Yeah, because he's so big and important. He doesn't want to be inconvenienced having to fly up to Tallahassee for a trial where he's not getting paid. Yeah.
Right.
That was
Just
such a weird interview, though, that Mentor Lawyer had with Kawas and Lacass there. I mean, I felt like I couldn't follow their logic at all on what they were saying. On one hand, they were saying Sigfredo wouldn't be a good witness for Meg Banois, right? Which is makes you wonder, like, okay. But then, I don't know, they were contradicting themselves and then going on and on and on about Luis lying.
Yeah, they wanted to focus on Luis Rivera being a snitch and he's totally self-serving and unreliable as a witness. But now look at what has happened. Katie has become the state's witness. So that's why I don't think attorneys should just go totally overboard and go to the media and, you know, post on Instagram and stuff, loudly proclaiming innocence and stuff, because, you know, a lot of times it turns out your client did do it, you know. So, and they admit it later.
I thought that interview was or that, you know, that after the sentencing discussion she had was interesting because she was so adamant during the trial that Katie was innocent, factually innocent, not just that the
Yes.
state couldn't prove it, but at that after the sentencing, when she was talking to the people outside, the journalists outside, she didn't seem to feel that way anymore. At least that was the vibe I got from her, that it was a very different feel, at least for me, than anything she said before. Because she didn't say, the jury did the job, the jury worked hard, she's factually innocent, we're giving it over to the public defender and they're going to appeal because I'm still behind her. Nothing like that. It was a very different tone for me than anything I had heard her say before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was still supportive of Katie, but her attitude seemed toned or tempered. Yeah. But I just want to play a tiny little snippet, but she did try to be very diplomatic by sort of like Dave Ehrenberg when he was on a show with me and I was trying to ask him about his opinion on Wendi. So both of them said something about how, well, she is a member of the Florida State Bar, blah, 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 so they don't want to really say how they
But
truly.
she was very clear. Dave Ehrenberg was a little more, muted. She was very clear that she thinks Wendi is guilty. There was no question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let me play this as well as the Sam Zankenhate little clip. It's very short, the part that I want to play. Let's see if I should make it faster, maybe 1.25. Okay.
Wait until there is a day where there is some really sort of absolute finality, if that can even be achieved. But hopefully at least some questions, if they can be answered, will be answered. Because I have no idea what he's going to say. So, we'll see.
His attorney says that they have truth on their side.
Burn to Charlie.
No comment. Would that be coming from his sister?
I'm sorry?
And would the truth be coming from his sister?
Oh.
But you see how I start with my little snippy comments, and I don't want to do that, so yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I didn't intend on giving a comment, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm lucky I didn't break down into tears. It was a very emotional thing for us with the verdict the last time, so. And it's just because this has just been part of our lives, as with all of you, because I recognize all your.
Is there?
The FBI is warning about a new scam that's made over 200,000 victims in record time. If you own a credit card, please.
Any idea, any of you can give us of what his role, Garcia's role, going to be in the upcoming Catherine Ivanova trial? Will he testify in any way?
At this point, Sigfredo's case is under appeal. I'm not an appellate lawyer, so he has new counsel for his appeal. I don't think the government's going to call him as a witness. They've offered him deal after deal after deal, and he rejected all these deals at the inception because it was going to hurt his wife, Ms. Magmanua. So the chances of him doing a complete 180, in essence, to help himself when he's kind of thrown himself on a grenade in this case for Ms. Magmanua, I don't think that he's going to testify on behalf of the government. And I don't think he's a good witness for Ms. Magmanua. And I don't think he's a good witness for Ms. Magmanua. And I don't think he's a good witness for Ms. Magmanua. So I don't see him having any kind of role other than the government presenting the evidence that they have from a prosecutorial standpoint.
No, you don't dispute that Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera were involved and they killed him.
Okay, sorry, I think it was a different video or different segment where Sam Zankenhate pretty much points to the Adelsons, and from what I recall, he did say something about how he suspected Wendi was also involved. But let me know if I'm wrong about that, though. But I do think when these attorneys who have seen all the evidence and stuff in the background come out and imply that or insinuate that Wendi Adelson was also involved, then that kind of makes me think that most likely she was involved also. And Mentor Lawyer also used that as one of his reasons in his top 20 plus reasons why I think Wendi Adelson was involved video.
It just seems pretty obvious. I mean, just the whole rhythm of everything that happened, and it just seems like, again, like Joe said, she's the main beneficiary, and her behavior after has not given us any reason to think otherwise. But I found what Kawas was saying and Sam, it didn't make sense that if Sigfredo were to testify, it was going to hurt Katie, but then they're trying to put this theory out that Charlie and Sigfredo organized this and it didn't have anything to do with Katie. I mean, nothing made sense. It just, I didn't find anything from Kawas and Lacass to be really coherent or believable. It just, nothing made sense. They were contradicting themselves with their own statements. All they could say is Luis.
Yeah, they just wanted to focus and say, look, you know, he's totally not a credible witness at all, and you know,
yeah,
he's been a shooter. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Okay, so we have more questions. Sorry, I don't think we can get to everybody's questions tonight, but Joe, do you think Donna came up with a lame story of being extorted in jail to counter the bribery wiretaps by Harvey? But I think that came before they found out.
Yeah, I do too.
Wiretaps.
Yeah, I think it preceded it. But I think she's trying to find, I mean, I think that was her first try at getting some sort of defense. And the one in October was the second try. And who knows if she had another one or two in the time she was, in jail. She seems to think she's the smartest person in the room, and nothing that's happened in the last few years has dissuaded her of that point of view.
Who, Wendi or Donna?
Donna.
Okay.
Donna, Wendi maybe also, but the one that I see all the time doing it is Donna.
Yeah, I agree. Charlie did that too. I think what I was also remembering when you had us look at the Kawas interview just there was this whole business about Luis. And then I'm wondering if that's what Donna is grasping onto, like that theory. That somehow, I mean, because doesn't she have some motion about bringing up the Latin Kings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring up the Latin
Luis,
Kings.
Yeah. So, which hopefully is going to be denied outright if it hasn't already been.
I'm a little curious as to why the state would even oppose it, because the motion doesn't make any sense on the timeline. Because she's saying, apparently, that her behavior after the bump was because she knew Rivera was a Latin king. But Charlie testified that he didn't even know Rivera was involved until he met with Katie and she said it. So some of it doesn't even, so her behavior when she first meets the undercover agent, she shouldn't have acted that way if in fact she knew nothing. So I don't understand. I mean, I'm half inclined to think they should let her do it and then go after her, because the story doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe they'll find a way if they can refer to the Latin Kings. Maybe they have a way that they're going to make it make sense, but I don't see it.
Well, I know Luis won't like it. He doesn't want that brought up at all. It puts him in a higher risk every time. You can just see him cringe every time it's brought up when he's on the stand. So not that they would make that would be part of their decision making, but it just seems superfluous to me that they want to just throw all this stuff out there. Isn't that sometimes what defense attorneys have to do? Just throw a bunch of stuff out there to see if one of the jurors just gets confused or overwhelmed by all these other potential theories.
Yeah, this on the state side, they want to make it clean, crisp, as unadorned with other stuff as they can, because they want to go from place one to conviction. And the defense often wants to throw anything they can out there to confuse that crisp line to a conviction. But that said, I don't think you should throw something out there that can be used by the state to help convict your client. You confuse, don't help.
So true.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody wants to know, Joe, do you think that the lawyers have talked to Donna about asking for a plea deal?
I don't know that the state has offered one. They could go from Donna to the state. I mean, often criminal lawyers talk to their client about a plea deal just to see where the client is, because it may be the best option. And if you recall, before the second set of lawyers were conflicted out, one of them talked to the state's attorney outside the hearing. I think it was the one where the first one before, maybe it was after Dan Markel had to get off the case. And he said the first thing he was going to do was reach out to the state about a deal. So, I mean, that's often your best option. But I don't know that Donna would have agreed to do it, and you can't do it if your client doesn't want to. And I don't know what kind of deal they might have been able to offer the state, because the state, I think the state has a really strong case against Donna, and I don't see any reason why they would be giving up very much. So the answer is they might have tried, but I don't think they would have had Donna's permission to try, and without her permission, they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah, plus the fact that she's already 75. So would she really agree to serve 10 years in prison in exchange for turning on Harvey and Wendi? Because now more and more people are starting to think Harvey could have been involved too.
Well, I have never understood, not having committed a murder, I want everybody to understand this, why she wouldn't turn on Wendi on a dime. Because Wendi has certainly deserted her from all we can tell. And she's got another son who's sitting in prison, and it's beyond me why she wouldn't want to say, I'll serve up Wendi on a platter if you'll give me something for Charlie. If I were she and I were in that situation, that's what I would do. But I'm not she.
No, I think her ego won't let her admit the truth, because she wouldn't want her friends and relatives and her sunshines knowing that she was a murderer. So I don't think she would come clean.
Well, you may be right, but so she's willing to have her son spend the rest of his life in prison. Her beloved son, maybe her favorite of the three,
According to
spend his
him.
whole life in prison because her ego will get in the way. You may well be right, but I would do it.
Very hard to admit to murder. Remember Katie's friend who was on your show, Judy, and we asked about why Katie, took so long to speak up and to testify or to say anything really in Charlie's trial. And she said, I don't remember her words or anything, but it is very difficult for anybody, from what I understand, to admit to murder.
Yeah.
I would think that it would be easier as you're sitting in jail or prison day after day after day, and your kids are growing up and you're not seeing them, that at some point, and she did actually, at some point you say, okay.
She finally did. Yeah.
As I say, I haven't committed a murder. I have no intention ever to commit a murder. So I'm probably not well placed to speak as to what I think they should do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jo, are you okay answering some more questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I can try.
How much does motive weigh in a criminal case?
Motive is not an element in a case. So the state can try a case and never show motive, but motive is very helpful with a jury because they want to understand why something happened, because that helps them decide that in fact it did happen. So motive is important.
Yeah, and plus, isn't that what most jurors want to know? It's like, why would this person want to commit murder then? Why would they do it? If they don't think that there's any motive, then they might be more inclined not to vote guilty. Yeah.
With all of the divorce filings and those crazy emails from Donna to Wendi, all of it seems like this case for sure is heavy on motive.
The extreme hatred they all had for Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The writing class audio, that can be used at a trial too, because that's Wendy's direct speaking and writings. Yeah. Oh, I'm way behind on the chat. I'm sorry. Maybe we'll just kind of skip down there. If anyone has like any red hot questions, please put a red question mark in front of them. But thank you guys both for being here. This is actually a very popular show. I can see from the numbers here. Yeah. See, Dawn, compared to us talking about Lori Daybell Fallow, it's like nobody cares about Fallow on this channel.
Yeah, well, when we talked about it, I was like, I was already filing her away. So I think a lot of people are filing her away, which I think it's the way it should be, really. Give her more attention that she craves. It's just kind of counterproductive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. How valid is comparison of a novel prior to murder to equal involvement? Well, they can bring up the novel, right? Because she herself said it was based on herself, and it was her story.
Yeah, and how valid it's how close it is to what the facts are, and the jury is the fact finder. It can decide it's irrelevant to what happened or it's compelling. So the evidence in the book there'd have to be a determination made that it's relevant to an issue in the case, and if so, the jury can then weigh how much they think it's worth.
This Julia has won one of our trivia contests in the past, so she's wondering, I thought Wendi went to Coral Springs immediately, not Miami. Yeah, that's what I'm not sure of, because I do recall somebody saying that she first went to the Coral Springs, the big family house that she grew up in first. And remember, Lacass said that she had told him she was cleaning out her childhood bedroom before Dan was murdered. So what do you guys recall? Where did she go first?
I don't even know where Coral Springs is in relationship to Miami.
Yeah, it's north of Miami.
Is it close?
Yeah.
I guess it's in traffic. Yeah, maybe an hour.
Yeah,
north.
I don't remember. I suppose it would make some sense because that house still had furniture in it, didn't it? Or no?
Yes, they didn't sell that house until I think 2015. So we were able to see pictures of that house online. But I recall Wendi did say something about how her parents were thinking about moving or downsizing to Miami. So they were just trying it out. So I guess that sort of explains why they had both places at the same time. So I'm not sure, but it kind of makes sense that, well, wait a second. We don't know for sure which school the kids went to first.
Or how long they were in the house, even if they went there first. It might have been only for a short period of time.
Who knows? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know. Yeah.
And nor do I.
Okay. What about you, Dawn?
I don't know. That's not something I would really, because it doesn't really, unless it impacts the case or there's something to that, I probably wouldn't remember it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe Sandra knows. Sandra seems to know everything.
Everything, right?
She won our trivia contest also. Okay, Jo, how do you think Wendi will approach her testimony, trying to protect Donna or throwing her under a bus?
I think Wendi will do whatever she and her lawyer thinks is the best way to avoid being prosecuted. And if that is thrown, now I don't think, depending on what, and I've lost the name because you pushed it up, but whoever it was, depending on what you mean by throwing under the bus, she's not going to do anything to throw Donna under the bus that would implicate her in the crime. So, that would be, her testimony would have to be careful that it would not at the same time cause her problems. Now there's still immunity, so the state can't use it, but she also wouldn't want the public at large to be more convinced that she's guilty. I think she's got an ego too. So I think her testimony is going to look a lot like the way it was in Katie's case and the way it was in Donna's case. I mean, in Charlie's case.
What additional questions do you think they would have for her, or would they keep it the same questions that they've had throughout the other trials?
Yeah, I think I mean, they brought in Donna's controlling nature with regard to Wendi and Donna's hand on the, on the steering wheel about, we got to get you to Miami in Charlie's case. That's more relevant to Donna's case. So I don't know if they've got more that they can use. And I haven't thought about this, whether there's evidence that they used against Charlie that they wouldn't use against Donna. I just don't know. I think it's going to be about the same.
Going to the crime scene. I don't know how
Yeah. Well,
that
this time against Donna, they also have, her notebook, if they're going to use anything from the notebook. They've got Rob Adelson, who may testify. Sarah Youssef, if Sarah Youssef testifies, whatever it is that Donna did with regard to that jailhouse informer, what's her name, Bernhard, which is more of it against Donna. I mean, Donna is, I think I would hire Donna to help me make a case as a prosecutor, because I think the strongest piece of evidence, which is the fleeing, she did on herself. And depending on what that evidence is about what she did with Bernhard, that could be pretty compelling too. She's trying to get somebody to perjure herself to tell a story that suggests that she's not guilty. I mean,
yeah. She just keeps digging her own hole, and then the wiretap calls with Harvey.
She's digging it's the Grand Canyon with her. It's not a minor hole. I mean, she's just busily. When she's not doing that, she's talking and saying things she shouldn't say. I mean, she's just a busy little energizer, like doing all the wrong things.
Yes. Donna. Oh my gosh, this is going to be fun. Gosh, it's July. We're only a month away. I can't.
Oh, finally. I hope it really happens. Yeah. Okay. Just to answer Julia's question. Yeah, I think that was actually a text, the one where Charlie and Donna were texting each other. And Charlie said, for all we know, or, maybe he got killed by a drug dealer that he didn't pay. I mean, of course that's going to come in. That's just like, so once again, it blows apart his so-called extortion theory. You weren't extorted if you were still coming up with these wacky ideas as to who could have killed Dan. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, more questions for Jo. I hope you're not too exhausted, Jo. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. Thoughts on why Jackie Fulford has suddenly been quiet the past 2 hearings?
Yeah, I don't know. Lawyers who are doing a joint representation of a client tend to divide, the job. So one takes some witnesses, another takes other witnesses. They may have divided who was doing some motions. I don't want to be snide. I've been snide enough tonight, but it may be that some of these motions are so silly that she just doesn't want to get up and do them. So she's leaving it to Zellman to do them instead. I don't think there's anything particularly, to derive from it one way or the other. She's just, maybe it's just not the stuff that she briefed herself.
Now, Zellman is first chair, isn't he? Or is she? Is Jackie?
Oh, they've designated themselves as that.
Yeah, I don't know. Wasn't he hired first? I don't know.
I thought he brought her on.
Right.
So I just figured it was divided. Yeah, duties divided. I don't read too much into that stuff.
Right. I don't either.
Okay, another question. Do you think Georgia will ask Wendi the same questions in Donna's trial as she did in the prior trials? Or could we hear new evidence about the divorce, Wendi's behavior and motive?
Is that for me?
Sure, why not? You're the professor.
I think they'd be the same questions in Donna's trial. I think some of what Rosemary is talking about the divorce, Wendy's behavior and motive, will be more relevant if Wendy's prosecuted. But I don't know that there's going to be much more with regard to Wendi in Donna's trial.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's see. Will Donna testify? Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's going to testify. That's her way to try to convince the jury of her whole story of being a poor grandma and who's being unfairly accused. And I think her defense is mainly going to be that she trusted Charlie and she just did what Charlie told her. Write these checks out to Katie to help her out.
Okay, I have a question for both of you. What would you love to see on the cross of Donna? Of course, obviously they have to stay within whatever is asked, however she testified on direct, but what would you love to see asked of her in all reasonableness that might be a little pushing the limits?
Judy?
Maybe something about the TV is about 5. Like, why would you even say that? But, and
well, I would say, assuming that we're right, and with Judy, I agree with her, that she's going to play the little grandmother who didn't know what her son was doing. I would love them to push on the notebook and on every aspect of her controlling nature. And, didn't you tell your older son you were going to disown him if he happened to marry the woman he wanted to marry? I would go through a list like that. And I would go through that notebook. I don't even know if they put it on the evidence list, however, just showing all the places where she was in charge and she was in charge and she was in charge. I just think that would be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Okay. And speaking of that notebook or the planner, I would also want to ask her, like, what did you talk about with Erica Johnson? Why did you put in here that you're going to meet with Erica? Because she's supposed to be one of the witnesses there. So I think the state should either ask Erica or ask both of them, what's this about a meeting you guys had? Because I'll bet Donna was doing her best to try to curry favor with this former employee who has had to testify.
Which meeting? What date was that?
Oh, I don't know the date, but once again, Deep Dive True Crime showed the notebooks or the date planners. So she put in there that she was going to talk with Erica. And I assume it's
within the last year or something.
Yeah, before she got arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Adelson.
And speaking of getting arrested, I would love to see them go after the explanation she gave at the motion hearing a couple of months ago of why she went to Vietnam. They were just tired and they wanted to go somewhere where they'd be in control. And if they had to go back because she was going to be prosecuted, they wouldn't be held in jail. They would just get on a plane and, I just think they could really
turn themselves in. Yeah. Give me a break.
Instead of going to Bermuda or somewhere pretty where you could get on a plane to come back immediately.
Well, one thing I hope that the prosecution does is they should show a video of Donna when she got arrested. Because when Pat Sanford went up to her and said, "You're under arrest for the murder of Dan Markel," she just kind of like threw up her hands and had this exasperated look on her face. And then she said something that sounded like, "Oh no," or "No, not again." It was kind of hard to hear.
That again, or something like that.
Yeah, or this, not again.
Not that. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It was some sort of like exasperated outburst. So it's not like, it's like, what? If you're innocent, you would be like, what are you doing? I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. Or what? You're
right.
Although Harvey did say you're making another mistake or something. Please don't do this. Yeah.
Don't do this.
Yeah, like you're gonna listen to Harvey and be like, "Oh, okay, sorry, ma'am. Get on the plane to Vietnam or Dubai." Yeah. So, Yeah. Well, to answer this question, do you guys remember how Rashbaum had that ultra-friendly cross-examination of Wendi at Charlie's trial, where he was listing a bunch of stuff that would make Wendi look good? You know, like you had an appointment for this, or you made plans to do this, or blah, blah, blah. You know, here's this bullet, the invitation where it said you were supposed to buy bullet, which again was not authenticated.
Right.
It wasn't admitted as evidence. But sure, I mean, Wendi was smart enough, in my opinion, to have these things already planned out to make it look like she was still staying in Tallahassee.
Yeah, he was very friendly to her. You had to wonder if she wasn't on his payroll, or he was on her. Wait, how does it go? She had him on her payroll. I mean, he was so friendly to her. Try to make her look really good. It didn't make sense because he was there to represent
defend Charlie.
Yeah.
Because I always thought it would have been good for Charlie's defense to kind of throw shade at Wendi,
right,
and say like, I didn't have anything to do with it. They did this. You know, Wendi was the one who was named by the hitman, not me. So, yeah. Well, yeah. There's also another inmate, Patricia Bird, who is also on the witness list. So I have no idea what her role is. Maybe she spoke with Katie, or who knows, maybe she spoke with Donna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but the main person we've been talking about lately is Dina Bernhardt, who we think is the one who was given a painting and given a script to help Donna. Okay, so do you guys think Harvey will be charged with anything?
If Donna is convicted, possibly. I mean, they have his Zelle, so do they have any evidence of him paying any of these inmates or paying their
buying commissary?
Yeah.
I don't know, but wasn't there talk about Harvey's Zelle account being investigated, or they got some info on that? Yeah. So it is starting to kind of tilt my thoughts towards probably, you know, I mean, we're just guessing again. Yeah. I'm sure if he did anything wrong or tried to bribe a witness or something, then he should get charges. Yeah. Or if they have evidence that he was actually involved in plotting to murder. Yeah. So do you think, I kind of feel like Katie will be more forthcoming. She seemed okay at Charlie's trial, which, you know, I was surprised because given how bad her proffers were, you know, I wasn't expecting much. And don't you guys remember how negative Tim Jansen was about Katie? Like he kept saying, no, the state is not going to call her, you know, it's nothing burger, you know, like if the state calls Katie as a witness, then there's something wrong with the prosecution's case or something like that. But
the problem is with Katie, with any witness, after 10 years, their memories start to go. Even Brannon's last testimony, I felt like Georgia really had to help him along because your memories really do fade. He's had many, many other cases since then. You know, this is a total side note, but do you know if his father was also a police officer in Tallahassee? Because there was a Brannon who was part of the response to the FSU murders by Ted Bundy.
And
there was a historical piece, and Brannon, I think his name was Scott Brannon, so it would have been like 20 years older than him. So I was just kind of curious, 20 or 30,
Yeah. Okay. Do we feel that Charlie started dating Katie? Well, maybe, but I think it was more that she was a pretty Filipino girl. Back then, she was really pretty looking.
Cute, yeah.
Yeah, and that was just his type. Yeah, but then also probably finding out that she's financially desperate and her baby daddy is this thug with a criminal record probably made it even more enticing.
And that happened really fast. I mean, it wasn't many dates when he's like, do you know somebody who can
harm somebody?
Harm someone, yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty sloppy too. Like,
Yeah.
no, he doesn't know her that well. How does he know she's not gonna?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Rashbaum was making it sound like they had just started dating in October, and then by Halloween, he was supposedly already asking Katie to find someone to harm someone. But from what I recall, they both worked at the same dental practice sometimes, because Katie was working as the front desk person at Sophie Dental, and Charlie would go there to work sometimes. So maybe he did actually know Katie before that, before they had a date.
He didn't date. Donna is an interesting mother. She was very controlling over who Rob should be able to marry. She was about as involved as she could be, that Wendi needed to fire a nice, successful Jewish boy. But with Charlie, she seemed to be okay with him dating women who may not have had college educations, who didn't come from sort of a high-class background. And I get the impression that of the women he dated over, and this may be unfair, so let me apologize in advance, but the women he dated over a long period of time, that he might have had one or two others who he thought might have had good connections for finding a hitman for him.
Possibly.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. He did seem to like some sort of trashy women. So I don't know if you guys saw that comedic reenactment that I did with Vince last Monday, but once again, it didn't start out as comedic. It wasn't supposed to be comedy, but as we reenacted and said the words from the phone call between Charlie and Janice, it was like hilarious. So anyway, so how do we think Wendi is probably feeling very nervous. So Jeff had mentioned she was already taking some sort of medication, maybe antidepressants or something back then. So, I don't think she has a job or nothing that's really out there that you can research.
Mm-hmm.
So she's probably busy preparing, getting her answers straight, and figuring out what witty diversionary comments she can
make in front of a mirror, no doubt. No doubt.
But she's she can be a good actress when she wants to. Yeah. Donna pushed Wendi to have kids. I wouldn't be surprised if she did, because Wendi seemed to really enjoy dating and being on the dating circuit and meeting different men and being sociable and being a social butterfly. So I bet once she had the two children so close in proximity, so close in time, that she probably did feel depressed, or like her life had ended because she's stuck in Tallahassee with Danny and two young children, and not being this prestigious, high-achieving type of person. Yeah. So thanks, everybody, for being here again. Let me scroll all the way down real fast. Let's see.
The note.
Oh, okay. My answer is no, Charlie wouldn't have to testify. Yeah, because they can still bring in these texts and stuff, things that law enforcement found, since they're all conspirators.
As long as it's in furtherance of the conspiracy. So not everything that Charlie says would be in furtherance of the conspiracy. But if it is, he's with conspiracy, the statement of one is the statement of all. So it would be like Donna saying it at Donna's trial.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we'll kind of try to wind this down here. Yeah, tomorrow's a work day already. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, let's get back to Wendi again, because I feel like I still haven't been able to address all of the points in here. And so I would say the overarching reason, besides the drive up to the crime scene thing, as to why I think Wendi was involved in the murder, is that they needed to make sure the murder was done and that they weren't going to get ripped off again because apparently these jail inmates had said, Sigfredo mentioned to them that the Adelsons had paid someone $50,000 the year before, and they got ripped off by that person. So why would they keep Wendi in the dark? There were tons of communications back and forth between Wendi and Charlie, as well as with Donna that morning. And I'm sure in the days leading up to Dan's murder. So she also took part in the totally ridiculous TV Alibi. So, you know, if you don't believe that the TV was really broken by a young child throwing a remote, then it makes no sense for innocent Wendi to then take part in this TV repair ruse. So I just don't see her family plotting this whole thing without her knowledge and without wanting to know Dan's specific schedule from her to make sure the hit was really done, and also to make sure the children weren't there when it happened.
Judy, the way you frame that is very, very compelling, because that's true. She would have no reason to pretend about the TV unless she was setting up an alibi. And that's a really great way to frame that.
Yeah, that broken TV to me has always been kind of like the basis for why I felt like she was so suspicious. When I did I think I did like a 10-part, years ago, of her police interview with Katie, another Katie. She mentioned she had 2 little kids that broke her TV. And I'm like, well, did they throw a remote? Like, how hard would that be to, do? And they were so little, it just, nothing about it seemed real. And it seemed very contrived that she would have Jeff, I think we talked about this earlier, Jeff watch a movie with the kids on a broken screen intentionally. The whole thing just seemed so off, and it never made sense to me that she would need her mom and her brother involved in whether or not to fix a TV in the first place. Like, it just, nothing made sense.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was so interesting to hear this stuff from Jeff Lacass, because he didn't mention this whole TV thing during his police interview. So it wasn't until his testimony at Charlie's trial that we heard these things, that the TV was just some cheap thing, and it just didn't make any sense. Like, why wouldn't this person who had a rich family just go ahead and buy a new TV then? But instead you want to keep it broken and keep watching TV on it to the point where your kids are crying and fussing because you're forcing them to watch something on the busted TV. It seemed very deliberately calculated so that she could have plenty of alibis for that day of the kill.
And didn't he, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over
No, go ahead.
Didn't he also, Judy, did he say there was another little TV in the bedroom that they could have watched on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it had to be embedded in their mind. Like,
so the TV had to remain busted, and it had to stay there, until July 18th for this repair date. It's totally suspicious. It makes no sense if she were totally innocent and not involved with the murder. So I don't think they would have just been like, oh, okay, well, we have a general idea that Dan typically drops off the kids, and so just go on out there and find him and go kill this guy.
It's really
and that's why once again, that's why Mentor Lawyer and I decided to do that stupid comedic video where he pretended he was Sigfredo looking on Prof's blog, trying to figure out what Dan Markel's schedule could be. Like, oh, there's Crime Fest or Crim Fest at Rutgers in July 24th. Okay. Just head on up there, go on up to Tallahassee and kill this guy. I don't know what his name is or whatever. Just figure it out, Yeah. That's what makes sense. So, anything else you guys want to add? I'm sorry, there's like a whole nother page that I had where we haven't really covered this. Darn it.
Maybe we should do another segment of this because there's so much to cover. I have to run because I have another podcast I have.
That's right. Okay. Sure. If you feel like coming back, either one of you, that'll be great.
Part two.
We're still interested in discussing this ad nauseum, right? Because there are so many puzzle pieces.
There's so much to it. There's so much to it.
Yeah. So if you guys have more comments about what really makes you think Wendi was involved, then feel free to drop a comment. But I know it's been talked about everywhere, for years and years.
It's funny because when there's an injustice, I think we're all going to just keep talking until the thing is made right, because it's our way of dealing with an injustice. I don't know. That's my psychology, my non-psychology degree.
Exactly, because we've heard so many people say such wonderful things about Dan Markel, and his family just seems so nice and dignified in contrast to the Adelsons, and you just feel so mad and angry for them that this happened. Yeah. I would also, just one last thing to point out is that the tenor has changed over the years. For example, the people behind Justice for Dan, originally they had posted something supporting Wendi. I think this was around 2015 or 2016, just saying, hey, you guys tone down your conjectures about Wendi, and, Wendi's been cooperative, something supportive. And I recall she even posted on Justice for Dan way back when, acting all innocent and stuff. But then years later, it's pretty obvious that the people behind Justice for Dan have changed their tune, and they think Wendi was involved after all. There have been all these former friends of Dan and Wendi's, who have publicly come out to speak on shows like STS, just basically saying, hey, initially, I didn't want to think she was involved. I didn't think so. But then things totally changed over the years.
Yeah, it's hard to not think that for me, but that's just me personally, and I know you're sharing that, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, Jo Potuto, any closing remarks?
No, I don't think so. Now that I've said no, I don't think so, I think I better stop, because I get annoyed at people who do that and then go on and talk. So I'm not going to do that.
Dawn just has to get going. So
yeah, I think from my perspective, we covered it fairly well. And Judy, thank you for putting this together, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for running such a great show.
Thank you. Always. Thank you both, Dawn and Professor Jo. Thank you so much. I couldn't do it without you guys, especially doing all the talking and stuff. So, yeah. Okay, well, have a good night, Dawn. Good luck at your next podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Judy. Thanks for the invite. And let me know if you want to do part 2 sometime.
Okay,
bye, chat. Good. Bye, everyone in the chat.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, everybody. Sorry I couldn't highlight everybody's comments, but I really appreciate it. Okay, have a great day. Have a good week. Okay.
So long.
Bye.